Hi everyone, today we're talking about adrenal diabetes. Adrenal diabetes is basically caused by high cortisol levels. Now, what exactly happens that I'll tell you, but when are cortisol levels high? Cortisol levels are high in Cushing syndrome. Other than that, cortisol levels are high when a person is taking steroid therapy or they're taking excessive steroid drugs, and cortisol levels are high under the stress condition. Now, what happens is that increased gluconeogenesis occurs during increased levels of cortisol. When cortisol levels are high, there'll be increased gluconeogenesis. What does gluconeogenesis mean? It means that the body is making glucose from non-carbohydrate substances such as proteins, fatty acid, and other substances. And there's moderate reduction in glucose utilization. What does this line mean? It means that the body is unable to use glucose. So a lot of glucose is being produced and there's decreased utilization of glucose. What will ultimately happen? This means that the blood glucose concentration are going to rise. Once blood glucose concentrations rise, insulin is secreted. And this is up till now, everything is normal because insulin has to respond to increased blood glucose concentration. Once insulin is secreted, what happens is that the body tissues and cells they are not responsive to insulin. They become insulin resistant. They do not respond well to insulin. And what happens exactly is, let's go a little bit back and discuss about insulin. So this is a skeletal muscle, and skeletal muscles, they have insulin receptors. So whenever there's increased blood glucose, especially after a person has consumed a meal and he's in a well-fed state, so what will happen? The blood glucose will rise. The pancreas will detect the increase in blood glucose level and they'll secrete insulin. Insulin comes and it binds with this insulin receptor, and then there'll be some sort of signal transduction occurring. This is a vesicle. In the vesicle is stored glut. What is a glut? Glut is basically a transporter. Glucose transporter. These glucose transporters are stored in these vesicles. So once the signal transduction happens here, these vesicles, they go to the membrane and they fuse there, and the glutes, they basically get translocated to the membrane and they get attached here. This allows the glucose to enter into the cell and get stored. So this is what happens normally. But in the case of adrenal diabetes, the insulin receptor, it becomes very weak. It is not able to, its reception, its sensitivity is extremely weakened. Because of that, it doesn't respond to insulin and glutes are not translocated to the membrane. So this is the reason of insulin resistance. Now, what happens for reasons that were discussed previously? High levels of glucocorticoid reduce the sensitivity of many tissues, especially the skeletal muscle, adipose tissue, to the stimulatory effects of insulin on glucose uptake and utilization. Besides potential direct effect of cortisol on expression of glucose transporters and enzymes, another thing that happens is that the high levels of fatty acid. Why are there high levels of fatty acids to begin with? Because of glucocorticoids. So glucocorticoids, they do what? They cause excessive lipolysis. They mobilize a lot of fat. All of that fat from the fat depots is going to go into the all of this fatty acid is going to into the blood. And when it goes into the blood, what it does is that it hinders the signal transduction, because of which the glutes won't be translocated. So what do fatty acids do? They hinder the signal transduction, because of which they impair the actions of insulin. So because of glucocorticoids, so what is happening in summary? There will be disturbances in carbohydrate metabolism, and this will result in adrenal diabetes because blood glucose levels are high. And when there are no glutes here, this means the glucose cannot come in and the blood glucose levels are high. So in short, what happens in adrenal diabetes? Blood glucose levels are high because of excessive cortisol. Now, you may be wanting to compare adrenal diabetes to diabetes mellitus type 2, which is adrenal diabetes and diabetes mellitus type 2. What is the difference between the two? So, this is because of the adrenal gland, and this is because of the pancreatic. This is pancreatic diabetes, the primary diabetes that we know. This is a secondary diabetes. This means that the cause is something else. And this is the primary diabetes that is very common and very well known. Here, hyperglycemia is caused by excessive cortisol. And why is the cortisol increased? Cortisol increases because of increased gluconeogenesis in the liver and decreasing glucose uptake in the muscles and fat. So why is there a decrease in glucose uptake? Because of insulin resistance. This is secondary diabetes. What about type 2 diabetes, which is diabetes mellitus? This is a primary diabetes, and it is a chronic metabolic disorder which is caused by insulin resistance and a relative insulin deficiency. Now, another very important summary point that you should know or you should be aware of is this thing right here. Cortisol causes high, so this is the big picture summary for your adrenal diabetes. So what happens in adrenal diabetes is that blood sugar level increases because of excessive cortisol. And why is it so? Because cortisol increases gluconeogenesis, it increases the liver production of glucose. Other than that, it prevents the muscles and fats from using glucose. Why? Because of the insulin resistance. And the third thing, it also causes again insulin resistance. It impairs the signal transduction because of excessive lipolysis and because of the fatty acids. So, yes, that's the bigger picture.